The Bible mentions it, but historians erased it from the records. If you've ever read the Old Testament, then chances are you've come across the story of an ancient city called Sodom. The story goes that God was fed up with the wickedness of the people living there, so he rained fire down from heaven and killed them all. But one thing you might have noticed is that the more you read about Sodom, the less you actually learn about it. Aside from the fact that it was super wicked, we don't know much at all about this legendary city. We don't know what its culture was like or even where it was located, and historians have been struggling to solve this mystery for centuries. It's no secret that most of us learned about Sodom and Gomorrah in Sunday school, and that's why a lot of people assume the city is nothing more than a fairy tale. But the strange thing is that even people who don't believe in God have trouble accepting this. One author wrote, "No one can read the description of the cities without feeling that there must have been some real city which the writer had in view." And that's exactly how most biblical scholars feel. Despite the fact that they don't believe in God, they still think there had to be some sort of real city that inspired the story. So their goal has been to figure out which city that was. Now, the easiest theory is that the two cities were actually just one, and that city was Sodom. But unfortunately, the evidence doesn't really support this theory. Most biblical scholars agree that Sodom was located somewhere in the Dead Sea Basin, but that's about as far as they can agree. As some say the city was located near the northern end of the basin, while others say it was located near the southern end. On top of that, some say the city was located on the eastern side, while others say it was on the western side. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of disagreement here. And although these scholars disagree on pretty much everything, there is one thing they seem to agree on. They all agree that the city was real. Okay, maybe not all of them. There is one guy named John Van Seters who says there never even was a city here. He believes the entire story is nothing but an ancient folk tale. But even Van Seters admits that there's a good chance there was a small village here. It just wasn't big enough to be considered a city. The problem with trying to find this ancient city is that nobody knows what to look for. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Except in this case, it's more like trying to find a city in a desert. But thankfully, technology has improved quite a bit since the days of old. Now we have satellite images that show us exactly what the land looked like thousands of years ago. This gives us a huge advantage over our predecessors, because now we can actually see the landscape hasn't changed that much over the years. So that means if there was once a large city here, we should be able to find the remains of it under all this sand. And that's exactly what happened in 2015 when researchers found something very interesting beneath the sands of the Judean desert. It was an ancient wall that seemed to be completely random. Researchers returned to the site to do more digging, and they uncovered a whole bunch of other stuff, including pottery, arrowheads, animal bones, and burned building materials. All of this indicated that there was once a large settlement right here. But it didn't look anything like what was described in the Bible. In the Bible, it says the city was full of people and there was a great abundance of food. But all we found here was a small village that definitely wasn't self-sufficient. At the time, most archaeologists believed that this village was actually Elusa. The reason for this is that in the Bible, it talks about how the people of Elusa ran away before God destroyed the city. And apparently, the people of this village did the exact same thing. But the problem with this theory is that according to the Bible, Elusa was located close to Sodom. In reality, it was located 23 miles away. To make things even worse, the Bible clearly says that the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed on the same day. But archaeological findings indicate that Tall el Hasa was abandoned 100 years before Sodom was destroyed. So as you can see, this theory doesn't really work. And to make matters worse, the leader of the dig site refused to publicize his findings. For some reason, he wanted to keep this a secret. So for years, this site remained a mystery. Nobody knew what it was or how it related to the destruction of Sodom. Then finally, in 2019, a group of Israeli archaeologists decided to take a closer look. They returned to the site and began excavating layer after layer of sand. And eventually they hit pay dirt. They found the remains of over 100 clay tablets. These tablets turned out to be personal name seals that were made during the Kingdom of Judah, and this gave researchers a very good idea of when the city was actually destroyed. You see, in ancient times, people would stamp designs into clay and then use these stamps as seals for letters. This was a way of signing your name without having to actually write it out. And these seals told us that this city was destroyed sometime before 586 BC. But that wasn't the only thing the seals told us. They also revealed the name of the city. The name was Tall el Hasa. Okay, so we finally know when the city was destroyed and we know its actual name. That's a major breakthrough, right? Well, yes and no. You see, they only found 15 of these clay tablets within the ruins of the city. The other 95 were found randomly scattered around the area. And that tells us that people from this city fled to other parts of the country before it was too late. And that brings us back to the Bible, because that's exactly what it says. It says the people of Tall el Hasa fled before the Lord destroyed the city. But that's not the only thing that matches up with the Bible. Another thing that matches up is the population size. According to the Bible, there were about 450 men living in Tall el Hasa, and excavations show that this was probably the population size. Back in 2015, when researchers first discovered this site, they estimated the population to be around 1,000 people. But after further excavations, they realized that estimate was way too high. Tall el Hasa was nowhere near large enough to support 1,000 people. So this seems to be yet another case of the Bible being 100% accurate. But here's the crazy part. This isn't the only Tall el Hasa mentioned in the Bible. There's actually another Tall el Hasa mentioned in the book of Joshua. In this passage, the Israelites are preparing for battle against the Canaanites, and Joshua tells them to go spy out the land of Canaan. He tells them to go to Tall el Hasa and spy it out for him. Then, a little bit later, the passage says, "And they spied it secretly and brought him word back into the camp." So does this mean there was actually a second Tall el Hasa? And if so, where is it? Well, it turns out there already was a Tall el Hasa, but it's gone now. Researchers believe the ancient Tall el Hasa was actually located at the Tel Tzaf settlement. In 1993, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Bronze Age settlement on the hill of Tzaf. But sadly, sometime after this discovery, someone looted the site. Right now, there's nothing left here but a few broken pieces of pottery. So to answer the question, yes, there was a Tall el Hasa, but that Tall el Hasa no longer exists. Someone destroyed it. And if you think that sounds crazy, just wait until you hear what happens next. After discovering the clay tablets, researchers hoped they would find more solid evidence of destruction. But when they dug deeper, all they found was burnt debris. It looked like a fire had swept through the city, burning everything in its path. But the funny thing is that this makes sense. In the Bible, it talks about how the people of Sodom and Gomorrah were so wicked that God destroyed them. And what better way to destroy a city than with fire from the heavens? Unfortunately, though, scientists aren't able to confirm that this was the cause of the destruction. The only thing they can say for sure is that the city was likely destroyed due to a natural disaster of some kind. Maybe it was a volcanic eruption, or maybe an earthquake caused a dam to break and flood the city. We simply don't know. All we know for sure is that Tall el Hasa no longer exists. And that means there's a very good chance we'll never know what happened to it. To make things worse, someone tried to cover up the evidence. Back in the 1930s, someone built a road right over the site, burying it under layers and layers of concrete. But luckily, researchers were able to get funding to remove the concrete and uncover the truth. But what will happen when they find something even bigger? Will they be allowed to continue the excavation, or will they be forced to bury it again? Unfortunately, there's no way to tell for sure. But I sincerely hope they're allowed to finish the job. I want to know what happened to Tall el Hasa. And I think everybody else does too. Thanks for watching. See you next time.